Okay, so I want you to have a listen to the high end of this mix, specifically the hats and the shakers, and how they're kind of loose and uncontrolled. They could be a lot tighter, and I think making them nice and tight will really improve the groove of the track. So let's just have a listen to how the track sounds at the moment. And now let's listen to it with split EQ on it. Listen again, I'm going to toggle it on and off, and I want you to really pay attention to the clap, the shakers, and the hi-hat, and just how everything feels a lot tighter when I toggle the split EQ on. And let me just solo the percussion group. Okay, so the results speak for themselves. I love it. I'm going to be using it on all my mixes. So let me just jump into the plugin and show you what it does and how it works. So let's open up Split EQ. This is just stock standard Split EQ. Nothing has been dialed in yet. I'll show you how I dialed it in for my track, but first let me explain to you exactly what it does. So basically what it does is it allows you to take a signal and split it up into two versions. So essentially there's two EQs built into here that are running in parallel, and through one EQ you've got the transients of your signal, and in the other EQ you've got the tails or the sustain or the tonal stuff. And we can solo each of those EQs and hear them in isolation, and just to show you exactly what I mean by that. So let's solo the transient portion. So we're hearing now just the transients. Now let me solo the tonal stuff. So it's all the tails without the transients. And we can control the amount of the transient that we're going to be dialing in and versus the amount of tonal stuff. So if I solo the transient again and then just play with the transient separation dials down here, as I increase this, you'll hear the transient getting shorter and tighter. And if I bring down this decay, it'll get even tighter. Okay, so now let's hear the tonal section. Now we're basically getting everything but the clicks, or the very, very start of each of the percussive sounds in there. Okay, so the great thing about this is now we've got these two little handles over here, these tabs. We can boost or reduce the tonality of whichever band we want to. And just like a normal EQ, it's got bell curves and notches and band passes and all of these things. So you can get really granular with this and really just control the sound so much. But not only that, you can also pan sounds around, which I haven't actually done in this mix, but it's pretty cool. You can get really interesting results. You can get really nice wide stereo images. If you can imagine having, let's say, like your hat group, just the transient panned over to the side, so that whatever's in the middle, like let's say you have, I don't know, a hang drum, like kind of like what I have, or a guitar or something where the transients are sitting in the middle and are kind of in your face. The hats are a bit more on the side. Or you could pan hats in opposite directions, but just the transients, so the tonal stuff still feels like it's sitting in its natural space. The possibilities are pretty big with this. Okay, so now that I've explained how Split EQ works, let me quickly run through what I've done to my percussion to make it sound so nice and tight with Split EQ. So I'm just going to toggle that on. So here, this is the basic curve that I did. I've gone in and basically reduced the toms, so you can hear there's toms in here, and I can solo this band to listen to them. So what I've done is just reduce the character of the tom, the tonal stuff. And I did that because I have that like hang drum instrument in there, and I didn't want the toms to kind of distract or steal the show from them. So let's just hear how it sounds to reduce just the tonality of them. Okay, and then we can unsolo that. And then just in the high end, I basically boosted just the transient of it. And that's really helped to make them tight, but all the magic in this really came in when I started reducing the high end of the tonality of the high end. You can hear suddenly, you can really feel like the groove of the shakers, whereas before they were kind of all smushed and smeared down, and they weren't like really giving the groove. They were just present, and they weren't, I just don't think they were helping. They weren't like doing what I wanted them to do in the mix. All right, so SplitEQ is kind of pricey, and you might have some other tools that you think could do the same thing, and that might be true. So I went and grabbed whatever else I think could work for this. So obviously a transient designer is the first thing that would come to mind, but most transient designers only work on the full stereo signal. They don't allow you to split it up into bands. But Neutron 3 has one that does allow you to split it up into bands. So I went in and I set Neutron up, the transient shaper. You can see I have a band here, pretty much the same point here. It's set, I think it's like 300 hertz, 300 up to 2.4K. And I'm kind of just reducing the sustain, just like I've done over here. I guess the sustain is kind of like the tonality. And then brought up the attack a little bit, and then the same thing on the high end. I've also brought up the attack and reduced the sustain. So the result is similar. Let's have a listen. So this is off, on. So it's tighter. It's kind of done the job. But let's compare this Neutron to SplitEQ. So I find with SplitEQ, the shape of the shakers just feels so much nicer. It's like it's smoother, but it's still like really groovy and a lot more present than in Neutron. Neutron feels a little harsher, and I think that might have to do with the way that the curves or the bands are split up. I'm not really sure how these are split up. I assume it's pretty steep curves, and here we are controlling, I guess, more of the range than we are controlling over here, and we can't really control the steepness of the curves. This isn't an EQ. This is an EQ. This is a multi-band transient shaper. So yes, if you have Neutron, you could kind of achieve a similar result, but it doesn't sound as good as this. Another thing with Neutron is you wouldn't be able to solo your transient and just listen to that, or solo your tonality or your sustain over here and just listen to that. Or maybe you can, but it's not obvious. I haven't figured out how to do it. So yeah, that's another really powerful thing about SplitEQ is you could throw it onto a reference track and just listen to the transients of the reference track, compare them to yours, and that might give you a huge aha moment, like, oh my gosh, the transients on the hi-hats of this track are so much more controlled than they are on mine. It's just really useful as a monitoring tool too. It's also got this analyzer that will help you monitor like that. So you can set this to listen to just the transient, and you can visualize what the transient looks like on the analyzer versus what the tonality looks like. And then, you couldn't really do this with ProQ because it doesn't allow you to control transients. But I just wanted to show you what it would sound like. Maybe some people will listen to my new version and say, hey, it just sounds like you've boosted the hats. You could probably just do that with a Q3. But let's compare what that sounds like. So I've got a boost here of around 5 dB on Pro Q3. And let's play this. Now let's actually do it in the mix so you can hear how this is going to ruin the mix. So Pro Q3 over here, in this case, it's just boosted everything. The transient and the tonality, and all it's done is made the problem worse and made the mix less controlled, and the mid-range is harder to hear now because the high end's too loud. SplitEQ, it just cleans it up and tightens it up. Great job. Okay, so yeah, I think it's definitely worth whatever it is, £150 for this if you can afford it. If you're an absolute beginner, you probably shouldn't be spending money on fancy EQs. Your ear still needs to, in most cases, develop enough to be able to effectively use these things, because it really is, it's not just something that you just turn on and it makes your mix sound better. You have to know what you're doing. It's very easy to actually ruin your mix with something like this, because it's easy to overdo stuff. So if you're an absolute beginner, I would say just stick to using traditional EQs for now until your ear's a bit more developed. But if you're a bit more advanced, then I would definitely recommend buying this. I do have a link in the description. It is an affiliate link. So yes, I might be a little bit biased about this, but the results speak for themselves. I guess it doesn't really matter if I'm biased. If it sounds good, it is good. So yeah. If you do choose to pick it up and you use that link, I will earn a little bit of money. So thank you for that. All right. Well, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next tutorial.